I'm not like those other gamers. While you engage in your competitive games and your Call of Duties, I play games with a reason, and Call of Duty too, because I'm superior to you. I want my brain to get thicker, wrinkler, and more bigger. That's right, I've played Dark Souls, only the third one, and understand its message, after I was told what it was. But I remain better than you in every way. I'm sure that with my unparalleled gamer knowledge, I'll finally get a girlfriend instead of a restraining order. Games can have serious Oscar bait narratives that are usually pretty good, or the wacky stories where you can clearly see the developers didn't want to focus on it. But there is a third type of game that I want to talk about. A game that's more about highlighting something that's important to the developers, whether it's some theme or a culture of your country. I have two games to talk about today. One about Czechoslovaks in Russia, and one about New Caledonia. Two games made with love. Two games made to honor the culture and history of their respective countries, and how, despite the achievements that they did to show us what they wanted, their games still fail in many other important ways.
Do nové republiky, která se zrodila v srdci Evropy. Jenže trčíme tady, protože sílící občanská válka blokuje přímou cestu na západ. Jediná cesta ven vede na východ přes území, o které bojuje Rudá a Bílá armáda. Musíme přejet Sibiř v obrněném vlaku a pak bezpečně doplout domů lodí. Je to naše jediná šance, jak tuto dlouhou cestu přežít. Možná to bude náš poslední vlak domů.
Last Train Home is a game about the Czechoslovak region trying to get home. You play as the leader of a battalion of this region traveling to Vladivostok. This game is masterfully done. Each chapter begins with a live action scene in your train with great authentic sets and costumes. It's a genuine treat that will pique anyone's interest into the real historical event. And the gameplay reinforces that interest, at least partially. There's two gameplay loops: managing your train in the overland map and solving missions in an XCOM-like setting. Managing your train is genuinely great. You can hand out promotions to your soldiers, send scouting parties on missions or to visit noteworthy areas to gather resources, or soldiers lost along the way. And every now and then, you get events which reinforce the themes of this game. You are trying to go home. The trip and the battalion you command are almost entirely fictional, but you get the sense throughout that something like this may have happened to the legionnaires trapped in Russia. It's genuinely great. It's linear, but you're successfully sold on the illusion that you are the commander and you need to get to Vladivostok. And the map, despite some technical issues with the graphics, it's beautiful to look at and unique from beginning to end. I genuinely cared about my men, even though their interactions were limited as shit. But at the end of every chapter, you need to send a squad of soldiers for XCOM missions. It's not great. At first, I really liked the idea. Instead of turns, it's in real time, which adds to the danger. You have to think on your feet. There's stealth, so in theory, you could play almost every mission as a ghost. And on occasion, you find gun emplacements or watchtowers or tanks that help you out. I can even think of a mission early on where I found a Soviet crew managing an armored car. There was no objective placement or anything to tell me to clear that group out, but I did. I stole their car, and I wiped the rest of the mission easy peasy. It's as the game goes on that these missions start to show their flaws, and by the final mission of the game, I grew to hate them. Let's talk about stealth. It's broken. Hilariously so. Soviet troops have cone-like visions and slow reaction times, exploitable ones. And this usually sticks to the AAA formula regarding stealth. So, for example, you get instant stealth kills on enemies and tall grass to hide in. Enemies are programmed as follows: they spot you, a question mark appears on their head, and if you don't break line of sight, after 7-ish seconds, they go hostile. If you break line of sight, they move to the position they saw you at, stopping about halfway to investigate. And of course, their 7-second timer resets back to 0. So, in theory, in not in theory, in practice, you hide in a bush, peeping your head out on occasion, clearing the map progressively as you insta-kill any red that comes into your bush. It's the most effective strategy. The devs even patched it, adding in a cooldown before you can insta-kill again. But all that does is make this tactic even slower. I come upon a village occupied by Soviets, I don't set up a plan of attack, plant mines, talk to angry villagers who want help. I look for a bush to stick a sniper into, which are also overpowered. It's hilarious at first, as bushes are so broken, tanks will even drive through them, pushing our soldiers and not even spotting them. Or Soviets being consistently curious with the bush that has 500 of their own men piled up dead. But it quickly becomes monotonous. And also, hilarious isn't what I'm looking for in a game about leading a battalion of soldiers through a country ravaged by one of the most devastating wars on the planet. And this isn't to say that the game is easy. Hell no. The game, on occasion, will throw the most ridiculous spikes of difficulty at you. There are moments where you have to hold the enemy off from a point you need to defend. That's fine. It's a staple of gaming in general, not just RTS games. The problem in those sequences is when they throw 2 armored cars right in heavy tanks all at once, after you had just used up your grenades to get past artillery posts with laser precision. Oh, don't worry, if your soldiers get on those same artillery posts, they're about as effective as a stormtrooper trying to fire at anything. Even the cover system in this game is broken. There are 3 states of cover: no cover, medium level, and full cover. Being out in the open is a guaranteed shot. Being in medium protection is fine. But full cover? Your units will be exchanging pot shots with the enemy until the end of times. God help you if you're in a position where moving would be suicide and have no grenades. I'm currently stuck in the final mission, and it is a perfect example of this spike. Opening the mission, you have the side quest to help either the White Army or the local resistance. Though, to be honest with you, you should let the White Army die. You have to face off against a small squad of enemy white soldiers. There's a reasonable explanation for this in the narrative. And a heavy tank. You will take heavy losses, so let those morons die and help the resistance. And honestly, these side quests only seem to translate into an easier route towards the objective and nothing else. Then, in the end, like this game likes to do, it's another defend the point mission. This one seems to have a lot going for it. You're already given a long-range artillery post and a short-range one, a gun emplacement, and tons of ammunition. It looks like a typical scene where they're going to throw everything they have at you, but they make sure you have the needed tools to fight back. And you're spotted by off-map artillery. Not coming in as a single wave, but constantly, about every 20-ish seconds. And it's not scripted. The bombardment falls where your troops are. So if you're lucky, only the defensive extra weapons are destroyed in the first bombardment wave. What follows that is bullshit. Soviet grenadier spam, forcing you to leave your broken full cover, and 20 infantry Soviets to make sure you regret leaving cover. Followed by, and I am not making this up, 4 armored cars. And I think it was 2 heavy tanks. I only got to that part of the mission once, so I might be a bit wrong on my counters. I loved the beginning hours of this game. I liked the middle parts, and I hated the end. As I'm writing this, I can't even say that I've finished the game. It's just the XCOM missions get old really fast due to everything I've described. The missions that seesawed between cakewalks and walks through hell. This goddamn broken stealth system. I'm honestly tired of half of the game, which is a shame. I see the passion, I see the love. They recorded the lines for every character that speaks in Czech, Slovak, and Russian, for God's sake. In many ways, this game feels like a first game developed by an inexperienced crew. And that's fine, inexperienced people can, at times, create great games. And Ashbourne Games created 2 games here. One of them great, the other one not so good. Despite all the negativity here, I can still recommend the game. It's made with passion, love, and the desire to share more about their history with the world. And despite the game's flaws, I believe that that is the most important thing a game needs to have. Passion. Which is also something I feel for the other game I mentioned in the beginning, which is called Chia. Chia is an interesting game. It's got a cutesy art style. It's inspired by New Caledonia. There are French-speaking characters and Caledonian speakers. Hold on. There are Kanak speakers. I'm definitely mispronouncing that. Like Rastering Home, there's a sense of passion and love for their culture. The founders of the development team behind Chia grew up in New Caledonia and wanted to highlight what it felt like exploring the island as kids, and that is definitely there. There's a sense of joyful wonder at the world you're in, at least from the game, and the movement mechanics are great. The physics they created make exploring the world really fun, along with the mechanic they implemented to take control of literally anything not nailed to the ground. Unfortunately, the moment the open world opens up, the game starts to disappoint. The world itself is great. It looks like New Caledonia. It's pretty to look at, but there's not much really here for you to do. Just hear me out. There's collectibles, mini games to play, but none of it matters, and painfully, it's all things that you've seen. Despite the setting, everything else about this game is just so unremarkable, and the mission design quickly started to bore me. To find your father who was kidnapped, you need to offer the guys who hold him a gift. So, to do that, you go talk to a chief who also needs a gift. And to do that, you need to go talk to someone else who also needs a gift. At least the first few hours of this game are just fetch quests. I'll also admit some personal bias here. I am far more interested in the history than the folklore. Demons, magical heroes, I prefer what happened to the stories that we share. Still, while I would have preferred the story more rooted in New Caledonian history than its folklore, I can respect the choice, and some of you will undoubtedly like this game more than I do for that reason alone. My main problem is really just what you do in this game is no more unique than what you do in, say, Far Cry. Outposts to clear, a map full of icons, and that's it. Great movement mechanics can solve a gameplay loop that's been outdated since 2015. I'm genuinely sorry, but that's all of the thoughts I have on Chia. I respect it, but what you actually do in it bored me to death. Movement is fun, but that's only enough for linear walking sims, not open world games. And it's really telling that the game lets you skip entire gameplay sections at the press of a button. Here's the thing, despite all the shit that I've been talking, I'm glad that games like Last Train Home and Chia exist. These are unique games. driven by passion and love for their culture. I have always said that games are better when they have something to do or say or are aiming for a specific audience. And these two games share an eagerness to talk about their homeland that can only be admired. Last Train Home has left me very interested in learning about the Legionnaires and their struggle to come home, while Chia, despite the dated mission design and open world gameplay, is downright adorable, and the musical moments are wonderfully done. These are flawed games, very flawed games, but their uniqueness and passion is enough to convince me that they should be supported. We should see more games like it, rather than this.